You probably know the story. The brilliant mathematician, the code breaker who saved millions. But here's what almost no one knows. Turing died at 41, not destroyed by enemies, but by the very society he protected. And that destruction was rooted in something far older than ambition or politics. It was rooted in loss. Turing didn't just invent the computer. He did something far more unsettling. He looked at the human mind, this thing we've called sacred for millennia, this thing that supposedly separates us from mere matter. And he said, I can copy that. Literally, intelligence is a process, and any process can be replicated. This is where the real story begins. Not with ChatGPT or Silicon Valley, but with a question so radical that 75 years later, we still don't know how to answer it. The question isn't whether machines can think. That's unanswerable because we can't even define thinking. We can't prove other humans think. You assume I'm conscious right now, but you can't verify it. You just see behavior that looks conscious. So Turing asked something different, something dangerous. He asked, if you can't tell the difference, does it matter? But this story begins before the machines. It begins with a boy, with a question so personal that it would take 75 years for humanity to realize what Turing was really asking. Can the mind exist without the body? Can thought survive death? This is where artificial intelligence truly begins. Not with billionaires or venture capital, but with a man alone with his grief, trying to prove that consciousness was just a pattern, that patterns could be copied. This is the story of how one man built a mirror. And when humanity finally looked into it decades later, we saw something we didn't want to see. We saw ourselves. Perfectly replicated. In silicon, to understand what Turing built, you need to understand what broke him first. 1930. Alan Turing is 18 at Sherborne School. Awkward and brilliant, obsessed with mathematics in ways that irritate his classics-focused teachers. There's a student named Christopher Moram. Equally brilliant, they find each other in the way brilliant, isolated people do. They talk about science, about the stars, about whether the mind could exist without the body. It's the kind of conversation only they seem interested in having. Christopher dies suddenly of tuberculosis. Turing doesn't just grieve, he obsesses. If Christopher's body is gone, rotted, turned to dust, where did his mind go? His thoughts? His personality? This becomes mathematical questioning. This is a young man trying to prove that death is not permanent, that consciousness, love, personality, all of it is just information, and information doesn't die. It can be transferred, copied, run on different hardware. Maybe the mind isn't magical or mystical. Maybe it's just a pattern that could exist in flesh or in silicon. Maybe Christopher still exists somewhere. Maybe the mind can be decoupled from the body. This desperate need to believe the person he loved didn't fully disappear. This obsession to escape death through mechanization of consciousness shapes everything Turing will do for the next 2 decades. 1936. At Cambridge, he publishes Uncomputable Numbers with an application to the Entscheidungsproblem. Nobody reads it, too abstract. But in that paper, he describes a machine that only exists on paper. It reads symbols from an infinite tape, follows instructions, and writes new symbols. What Turing just invented is the concept of software, the separation of instructions from the machine. Before Turing, one machine could do one job. After Turing, one machine could do infinite jobs. Just change the instructions. This is the universal Turing machine, the blueprint for every AI. 1948. 3 years after the war ended, Turing is working at the National Physical Laboratory in London. He writes something his boss dismisses as schoolboy's work. In a paper that would remain unpublished during his lifetime, Turing describes unorganized machines, networks of artificial neurons, random at first, but then you train them, reward the right mistakes, punish the wrong ones. Through iteration, the machine reorganizes itself. It learns. This describes deep learning and neural networks, the technology behind ChatGPT, behind every modern AI. He described it 75 years before the hardware existed to build it. He also describes genetic algorithms, simulate evolution, keep what works, let it reproduce, and suggests something revolutionary. Don't try to program an adult intelligent mind. Instead, program a child machine. Train it, educate it, let it grow. And here's the disturbing part. He believed the mind, your mind, my mind, every human mind, is just computation, just patterns, just information processing. Not sacred, not magical, not special, replicable. When nobody would listen to his theories, Turing realized he needed a practical test, a question so precise it couldn't be ignored. 1950, Turing publishes an article in the philosophy journal Mind. He refuses to answer whether machines can think. He says this question is meaningless. We don't know what thinking is. We've wasted centuries arguing about definitions while getting nowhere. Instead, he proposed a game. Imagine you're in a room typing messages to two entities you can't see. One is human, one is a machine. You ask questions, they answer. You try to figure out which is which. If the machine can consistently fool you for more than 5 minutes, passing Turing's own metric of a 70% success rate, then it's intelligent. By some measures, modern AI may have achieved this. By others, it merely convinces humans who want to be convinced. And here's the trap he's setting, not for machines, but for humanity itself. If behavior is all that exists, then consciousness becomes unknowable and behavior becomes controllable. You can't prove you're conscious. I can't prove I'm conscious. We can only observe behavior and infer consciousness, which means the boundary between human and machine collapses. Not because machines became conscious, but because consciousness becomes meaningless as a category. And if behavior is all that exists, then behavior can be modified, controlled, programmed. You can't have a true self separate from your actions. Your actions are you, which means if you can control behavior, you can control the person. Turing just proved that consciousness is unknowable and controllable through behavior modification. He didn't realize he'd just written the playbook for his own persecution. Turing removed the special category we built for ourselves. He says, prove it. Show me the difference between your intelligence and the machine's intelligence that doesn't boil down to, I just feel different. This is why every modern AI is playing Turing's game. Every time you talk to ChatGPT, you're the judge. But Turing saw where this was heading. In 1951, on a BBC radio lecture titled, Can Automatic Calculating Machines Be Said to Think? He predicts a moment we now call the Singularity. It seems probable that once the machine thinking method had started, it would not take long to outstrip our feeble powers. At some stage, therefore, we should have to expect the machines to take control. The moment when the child machine surpasses its parent, the moment Turing saw coming 75 years before we had the vocabulary to name it. He even considered solutions with bitter irony. We could turn off the power at strategic moments, then acknowledges, but that would leave us, as a species, quite dwarfed. The man who cracked the code of the mind saw exactly where it led, and it terrified him. Here is the cruelest irony in the history of science. The man who proved that intelligence was mechanical, that it could be replicated, that there was nothing sacred separating human from machine, was destroyed by the most irrational force imaginable. Human prejudice. But in 1952, everything changed. The tolerance ended. Police discovered his homosexuality. He was arrested and convicted of gross indecency. To avoid prison, to keep working, he accepts what they call treatment, chemical castration, hormone injections that destroy his body while his mind remains trapped inside. He lost his security clearance and access to his life's work. He was rejected by the establishment he had helped save during the war. But here's what nobody talks about. Here's the cruelest part. Turing spent his life proving that consciousness is behavior, that mind is mechanical, that the human being is essentially a machine that can be programmed through reward and punishment. And then the British state proved his theory correct by treating him like a machine. They simply modified his behavior through chemical programming. Exactly as his theory predicted, one could control any biological system. They turned Turing himself into an experiment in his own theory. They made him the proof of his own theorem. He was not persecuted for his ideas. He was persecuted through his ideas, using his own logic, his own framework. The theoretical hammer he'd built was used to crush him. The mirror had turned inward. June 8, 1954. His mother finds him in his bed. Beside him lay an apple, partially eaten, assumed to contain cyanide. The apple was never chemically tested. The death was ruled suicide based on circumstance and assumption, not forensic evidence. He was 41 years old. The society that celebrates artificial intelligence today, that builds trillion-dollar companies on Turing's ideas, is the direct descendant of the society that chemically castrated him. We didn't learn the lesson. We didn't evolve past the fear of intelligence we don't control. We just directed that fear outward, toward machines. The mirror shows our deepest fear, not of monsters, not of machines. Our fear of any intelligence, human or artificial, that we cannot control. Turing knew the AI he conceptualized would have power we couldn't contain, but he also knew something darker, that we've always been afraid of intelligence we don't understand. We punish it, we persecute it, we destroy it. We did it to Turing. We did it to countless others who thought differently, loved differently, existed differently. And now we've built artificial minds in our image, and we're terrified they'll surpass us. We're afraid the machine will do to us what we've always done to each other. Turing gave us the theoretical foundation, but the practical question remained: how do we govern these intelligences? In the 40s and 50s, a new science emerged with an answer: cybernetics, the science of control and communication in animals and machines. It promised we could design systems to keep intelligence in productive balance. One nation took this dream further than anyone, built an entire cybernetic vision of the future, and watched it collapse. That story about cybernetics comes next. What does it mean to be intelligent, to be conscious, to be alive when machines can do everything you can do? We are living in Turing's world right now. Every AI you use, every chatbot you talk to, you're playing the imitation game. The machine is trying to fool you, and it's getting better. You're the judge. And if you can't tell the difference, then what does that make you? The mirror Turing built is hanging on every wall now. And for the first time, we understand what Turing understood. We might not be as special as we thought. New videos arrive every Tuesday, Thursday, and Sunday, with AI Tuesday continuing the saga each week. The real question isn't whether machines can think. The real question is, what will we do when we stop being able to pretend we don't already know the answer?